Tennis star Novak Djokovic had his visa to enter Australia dramatically revoked on his arrival in Melbourne. The world number one was held in the city's airport for several hours before border officials announced he had not met entry rules and would be deported. We have details in this report.
On the issue of Mr. Djokovic,
authorities say the tennis star failed to provide necessary evidence for vaccine exemption amid surging Covid-19 pandemic. Djokovic was taken from Melbourne's Tullamarine Airport to the Park Hotel, a government detention hotel notorious for several coronavirus outbreaks, pending his removal. Outside the hotel, supporters of the tennis star told the reporters they were angry at his treatment. He's expected to be flown out later on Thursday, although the tennis star's lawyers have filed an injunction which has now been rescheduled for 6 p.m. Djokovic said his medical exemption had been granted by 2 independent medical panels, but border officials said he had failed to provide appropriate evidence for entry from arriving on Wednesday from Dubai. Australia's Prime Minister Scott Morrison denied Djokovic was being singled out and said no one was above the country's rules. But he added that Djokovic's stance on vaccination had also drawn attention.
And I want to thank the Australian Border Force officers for doing their job, implementing the government's policy. And the ABF has done their job. Entry with a visa requires double vaccination or a medical exemption. I'm advised that such an exemption was not in place, and as a result, he is subject to the same rule as anyone else. I also want to stress that ultimately, this is the responsibility of the traveller. It is for the traveller to be able to assert and back up their ability to come into the country consistent with our laws. So they'll take advice from many places. No advice was provided by the Commonwealth Government, I underscore, but they will take advice, but it's up to them at the end of the day. And if they don't comply with the rules, then the Australian Border Force will do their job, and they have done their job. This is nothing about any one individual. It is simply a matter of following the rules. And so those processes will take their course over the next few hours, and that event will play out as it should.
Meanwhile, the Australian Broadcasting Corporation has reported that 2 other people were now having their medical exemptions reviewed. The tennis star's father, Djokovic, said his son had been held in a room guarded by police at the airport. In a statement released to the media, he said, quote, "This is not just a fight for Novak, but a fight for the whole world." Serbia's president, Aleksandar Vučić, said the star was a victim of harassment and said that the whole of Serbia supported him. Meanwhile, Australia's Prime Minister denied the visa cancellation was because of any particular position in relation to Serbia, describing the nation as a good friend of Australia.
Well, I don't believe it is at all. Australia has sovereign borders and clear rules that are non-discriminatory, and as so many other countries do. It has nothing to do with those issues. It just has to do with the fair and reasonable application of Australia's border protection laws. It is not appropriate for me to go into Mr. Djokovic's own medical history. That would not be a fair thing for us to do. They are matters for him to discuss in terms of his own medical history. But all I can say is that the evidence for medical exemption that was provided was found to be insufficient.
Australia is seeing tens of thousands of COVID-19 cases for the first time after enjoying some of the world's strictest restrictions. More than 90% of Australia's over 16 population is fully vaccinated, but some people still cannot travel interstate or globally because of current measures. Many Australians had previously accused the government of allowing the rich and famous to do as they please, while ordinary people remain separated from sick and dying loved ones. Rules are rules, the Prime Minister says about Novak Djokovic being deported. Scott Morrison is back to talking tough, but so far he hasn't explained or answered the glaring questions at the heart of this story. The question remains, What is the issue with Djokovic's visa? What is the medical reason for his exemption? And why had he been given the green light to fly and take part in the Australian Open if there are issues with his visa application? Big enough issues, it seems, for the player to get deported. These indeed are many questions begging for answers.